Today on the Sundry Book Club, I'm discussing Bunyan and Henry, or The Beautiful Destiny, with author Mark Cecil. Let's get started. I'm excited to talk to you, particularly because we both share a love of books that reflect the world and the current climate. And there's, frankly, so much to talk and write about. So,
Yeah,
from
for
that
sure.
perspective, I think it's really good. And I think welcome to everybody who's joined, by the way. Welcome again to the Sundry Book Club. I guess I'll kick it off and introduce you all to the absolutely wonderful Mark Cecil, who is an author, podcaster, writer, journalist, all the things. And I think we're going to have a really fun talk about both this wonderful book back here, Bunyan
Yes.
and Henry, and awesome art. And I just, I want to talk about writing and some fun questions at the end as well that I've snuck in. But maybe we can start. You can tell us a little bit about your book and just a brief summary of what it's all about for folks who have not had the pleasure of reading it yet.
For sure. Well, thank you for so much for having me here. I love everything you do. I'm
Thanks.
so into it. And you were like one of like the very first fans of this book, like sort of right when it came out. I think you got really into it, and that was for a debut author. That is just like you never forget the people who were there first, like cheering for you. So that was amazing. But yeah, Bunyan and Henry. It's a book unlike any other, and I don't even like it's a book that's sort of like hard to categorize, and but I would just like I love it when people really get into it because I feel like it's the kind of book where it's like people who love it and get it like really love it and get it. But it started out as a bedtime story for my kids, and I was telling them all kinds of bedtime stories a few years ago, and I, I was looking for a story that was sort of like about America, that had like adventure, that I could like entertain them every night because there was like an endless kind of desire for more and more storytelling from me, and so I just was looking for something that maybe lasted a little while. And so I love the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I thought I could like tell the story of the Epic of Gilgamesh set in America. And I thought like, who are our real folk heroes? And Paul Bunyan and John Henry are like two of the best for sure. And I also wanted to tell a story about a black person and a white person working together. Like I have a black wife and we have four mixed race kids. And I wanted to tell like a story of kind of like an unexpected kind of partnership and love between two people who came from totally different parts of America. So there was that. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to tell a story also about hope. I mean, we can talk about like the book is called Bunyan and Henry or The Beautiful Destiny. And like, in a nutshell, the book is also sort of about trying to do what you want in life and like kind of like following your instinct and trying to listen to like the little voice inside you that's telling you to like live the life that you want to live, and how very little is guaranteed for you if you chase your dreams, and it's going to be like, as the book always says, it's like a twisty path that you have to follow, and you're not really promised anything, but you are promised that like you will have this one shot to fulfill your dreams. And so it's a book about people with big dreams.
I love that. And I love that you based it on, I guess, ancient fairy tale and
Yeah,
storytelling techniques. And I wonder if we can dig into that a little bit more.
of
What
course.
about that time period, or not time period, but that sort of literary style drew you into this book? Like, how did you make those two worlds meet?
Well, I mean, I love the Epic of Gilgamesh. If you've never read it, it is like one of the greatest stories ever told. And you could like, it's like written on stone tablets, so it's not very long. You could read it in like 45 minutes. But there was something about the outwardness of that story. And it's like, you get up in front of like the live studio audience of like your four tiny children, and you're trying to kind of like deliver something unforgettable. And it's like, it's funny. I was at some book reading recently, and somebody was, or maybe it was like on my podcast, like somebody was saying like, oh yeah, try being like an ancient caveman, like sitting around the fire and like telling a quiet story about your parents having an affair. It's like nobody's going to pay attention, but it's like me telling bedtime stories to my kid is sort of like this ancient around the campfire feeling. And so it's not a quiet story. It's a big story with big, bold strokes. And yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot of quiet literary fiction out there, and I love a lot of quiet literary fiction. But this is not that. This is a real noisy book about a real noisy, complicated country.
I mean, noisy is such a good word for your book because it doesn't ever calm down. You know,
Yeah.
you
Just like
start on
me.
page one. I don't know. I mean, I think that's important because
Yeah.
a little will look at oh, it's a folk tale, it's a retelling of an American fairy tale, and this is
Yeah.
not for me. And I actually found this to be very much of a character study because of what you just said and how America reflects back to the reader through this story. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about the components of American history that maybe you researched and that pulled you into these two icons in American history or in American folk history, just to help us understand how you paired them, because they're not the same, right? They don't live side by side in American folk tales. They don't really
Yeah.
merge. How did that writing process work?
Yeah, well, Paul Bunyan is sort of like a made up figure. There, I had a lot more freedom with Paul Bunyan, who is the main character of the book, and he's somebody who kind of came out of the logging camps, sort of in the 1800s, a kind of tall tale figure. But like back then, it wasn't like a Disneyfied Paul Bunyan. It was like, this is the stories. I mean, just imagine what a bunch of loggers are sitting around telling each other at night. It's like it's not about flapjacks and Babe the Blue Ox. I mean, these were like really kind of like think of like kind of X-rated comedy. But then like over time, over like hundreds of years, like it sort of made its way into the culture and into Disney, and he became a little bit more of a friendly character. But I just had a lot of freedom with him because he's just most people think he's just basically made up. But John Henry is very different. John Henry is most people agree that he was a real person and he was a convict and he was doing prison labor, which was like a terrible terrible chapter in our country's history after slavery ended during reconstruction. And he was got in this kind of contest with a steam drill, and he died, and he beat this steam drill in hammering a hole through some stone, and then he died. And like it's just such a kind of epic like tale worthy of Greek tragedy. It's like the three beats of the John Henry story are, which is made famous by this John Henry song, is that he was born and his mother said, you're going to die with a hammer in your hand. Then he beats this, 30 years later or whatever, he beats the steam drill in a contest, and then he does die with a hammer in his hand. And it's like, there's like a prophecy, and it's sort of like sorrowful, and it's about like the working man, and it's about prison, and it just says so much about the American character. And then Bunyan is this kind of larger than life, kind of less complex figure. But I think like bringing these two guys together sort of like brings, and they have to work together in the book. It really brings together kind of a lot of the complicated things around race and class and capitalism that are going on in this country. So.
Yeah, and I think John Henry's story is also originally not told through his voice, right? It's
Yeah.
told through kind of a white voice, if you will. And
Hmm.
so, we also don't have the level of first person narrative there the way we do
Right.
with other literature that, that came out of Frederick Douglass and so on and so
Yeah.
forth.
Sure. Sure.
Very
Sure.
much told their own narrative. and
Yeah.
and I guess just digging a little more into writing. I mean, you've been a writer for so many years. I know that we've spoken before, and you mentioned that you used to be a journalist in the financial world, and we don't need to go down that road today, but someday we'll come back to it. I'm wondering, like, how did writing pull you in? Where did you meet the world of writing? And second question, can you remember a book or two that made you think, wow, I want to do that?
Yeah. Oh my God, 100%. So I like really wanted to be, I kind of discovered writing when, I don't know, maybe like later than some writers you would think that you hear about. But I mean, maybe sort of like in high school, I started really, started writing short stories and things like that. And I just sort of knew but once I got to college, I'm like, this is the path for me. This is what I really want to do. I had no idea what shape it would take. And like you said, I went to work in New York City, and I got a job writing about finance and Wall Street and stuff. And it was fine. It was a way to make a living as a writer. It wasn't like I really cared about that stuff, but I just wanted to see if I could live as a writer, and that's what was kind of around at that time. I would say like the books that like truly inspired me. I mean, like definitely, this is going to sound, I don't know how it's going to sound actually, but like it's just the truth. When I read The Odyssey by Homer for like the first time as an adult, I might have read it as like a kid, like in high school or something, but I mean, whatever. But like when I read it as an adult and it really hit me, I mean, it just totally blew me away. I just like could not put that book down, and I thought like this is the kind of thing I want to do. And Bunyan and Henry is very much kind of like an Odyssey type, a hero's journey, if you will, kind of story. So it was that, and then I really also just like I like the Old Testament of the Bible. I mean, like one of my favorite books is the Book of Job, and what I love about that and Homer is that like this is art that was like for the people. It's art that has stood the test of time. It's art that's extremely easy to understand, like what the story is. And it's sort of like this kind of carved in stone. I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh is that way too, but this kind of like carved in stone, these kind of like eternal kind of conflicts and struggles cast on a big stage. I can't get enough of that stuff.
That's awesome. There's a book that I recently read called Glorious Exploits
Ooh.
by Ferdia Lenin. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you've read it, but I think you would
Mm-mm.
really love it.
Yes.
It's set in ancient Sicily, but it stars two main characters that are Sicilian, but they speak with an Irish brogue, and they speak in
Nice.
modern day Ireland. And one of the lines in the book, it's incredible. It's something one of the characters says. He says, "Do you think Homer knew he was writing the Odyssey when he wrote it?" Meaning the magnitude of the importance of
Right,
that
right,
book.
right.
Do you think he as an author knew what he was actually putting into the world when he wrote it? And that kind of blew my mind. Like, I wish we
I
could go.
wonder that. I wonder that about Shakespeare too. It's like it's sort of like one of these great mysteries of literature that like, some of the greatest writers ever, you can't just ask them like what did they think of their own work. I think it's a fascinating question.
Yeah, and I mean I kind of wonder who in this time period will be the next Homer, or the next, maybe
Yeah.
not Shakespeare or Homer, but who's on the docket for being around 100 years later, assuming we still have books in 100 years. Who
Or
knows?
people.
Or people, or both. I don't know. Paper. I'm not actually sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just thinking about that today, but just real quick. I mean, I was talking to a friend about how this friend of mine just released a book, and the book is kind of doing okay. And this person is like a best-selling author, but they're thinking like, is there really a future for me? Like the world of books is changing so much. And I was just saying to her, I was like, listen, um, I just believe that humans have a deep, deep, deep craving for long form storytelling. Like, even if people are just kind of like infinite scrolling on their phone, or like, their attention span is 8 seconds or whatever it is people say, I'm just sort of like, yeah, that's fine. But like, everybody still wants to be sucked in to some big long ass story, that it's like, and the question for our generation is like, what medium is that going to be in, right? Like, is it the novel, is it movie, is it TV, is it video games, is it something else? But it's just there's this kind of explosion of the packaging of long form storytelling. And I just think the answer is like, so kind of like, who is the Homer of today? Like, what long form story from our generation will last? That, I mean, obviously I don't know, but I also don't even know like what medium it will be in. So
why do you think that is? Why do you think people at their core want that storytelling method?
because I think one of the great things that art, one of the most essential things that art offers, is a way to um, fundamentally kind of change your mood and escape from your own consciousness. And you are brought into the mood and worldview and consciousness of the person who's telling the story. And there's this way that you just like sit back and like let it wash over you. And like the storyteller, if they're a good storyteller, I think says, take me by the hand. I'm going to lead you through this thing. And I just think it's like a different part of your brain that you're using when you're like scrolling for distraction. I mean, that is a kind of escape seeking, but there's something else. I mean, I've heard like AI people talk about like, oh, one of the great things about AI storytelling will be that like you get to make up the story on your own with your prompts. And it's like, yes, that is like true, but I think that like takes away one of the great gifts of these great storytellers that they provide, which is like, hey, come on this journey with me. You don't have to do anything. I'm going to lead you down this path, and I'm going to take you into a world and into a way of seeing life, which is different from yours. And I think that's just a beautiful thing that art has always given people.
Yeah, and to your point about AI, I wonder. the short attention spans that we've seen, kind of in the world that are
Yeah.
developing. I wonder how much of that is people don't want to go there and be confronted with deep emotions that they then have to wrestle with. It's like, oh, let me hold these emotions at arm's length. I don't want to
Yeah.
ever have to confront them. I don't want to have to deal with them. And so that 8 seconds is plenty for me. I don't have to opt into any of that. I just read Hamlet by
Oh yeah.
Maggie O'Farrell, and I'm sure you've heard of it, but you get a front row seat to the grief in that book,
Yeah.
and you can't opt out. And
Yeah.
people have criticized the book for that. They're saying, "Oh no, it's not okay," and it's too emotionally manipulative. And I'm like, but that's what a book is supposed to be. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on like the state of what's the vibe in kind of the world of authors as far as putting out books in this climate, or do you feel like publishers are maybe taking less
Ah.
risk? And where do you think we're going as a storyteller?
Yeah. I mean, I had Maggie O'Farrell on my show like right when that book came out, and I loved Hamnet, and I did see the movie also, and movie was good, and it certainly like made everybody cry. But I think that the book is like a superior work of art. But they're both great. But I think that like this is a really interesting question, and this is a question that everybody's talking about. Is sort of like, hey, I just put a book out. Like, what am I even doing? Like, I had this guy Patrick Ryan on my show last week who wrote this book
Mhm.
Buckeye, which was a big hit last year, and he said that one of the things he was worried about with his book was that somebody would look at it and say, this is an unnecessary story. And I asked him about that. And it's like, it gets to just the thing that you were just saying, which is like, if you're writing a book, I mean, the kind of book that he wrote, I won't describe it, but it's just like, it's almost like any book could like, you could have that critique made of it. Like in a time of such upheaval, is art, is fictional storytelling necessary? And I just like really believe it is, because I just think like, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like art is performing a function now, which it performs in times of relative calm, which is that, again, it offers an escape to people. It offers a new perspective to people. Like one of the greatest things about art is that you engage with it, especially literature. You engage with it and you get new ideas from it, and you see characters who are dealing with various things in their life, and like say maybe they're dealing with like some kind of a divorce situation, or they're dealing with like some parenting situation, or like whatever it is, and they say something that they've learned from it, or something that they see about the world, and you're like, wait a second, I like could apply this to something in my life, which is different, a certain way that I'm stressed out, or a certain way that I want to have an attitude about the upheaval going on right now. There's just so much wisdom and perspective in art. And that's like the whole point of it, is like understanding new perspectives, because we're all just grinding right now and like feeling helpless. And, to have another perspective come along from like a brilliant person, wherever you may find it, I mean, it helps refresh the soul, and it helps you like kind of have energy to tackle what's in front of you.
Yeah, there's also a solace when you read a book that doesn't look like you and you find something in it that you can relate to. I think
Yes.
there's a great comfort in that, at least for me as a reader.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. I love that.
I think I like to read books because I want to bridge the gap between myself and an author and just understand their perspective, and then also understand where I can connect with them. So, I do think books are incredibly important in this day and age. And I know this is a bit of a self-selecting group of readers that are tuning into this, but I do wanted to kind of not call you out, but remind you of so Mark was generous enough to give us his time when my book club read this wonderful novel in December. And in our discussion, you mentioned that you are in a book club for men.
Yes.
And I am so curious, can you talk a little bit more about how that came to be? And also, why is it important for men to A, read fiction, and B, read it in a group like that? And I do have more follow-up questions.
Oh my God, this is like such an important topic. And obviously it like plugs into the sort of, there's a lot of talk about masculinity and the manosphere and like how men are doing today. This is like a major cultural current. And I think that like this book club, is relevant to that. So it's a book club that's run out of Wellesley Books near where I live in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
There's a guy named Bill Coley who runs Wellesley Books, and he started this book club. I have no idea how many years ago. I was at the very first one, but it was maybe like 10, 12 years ago. And it's usually about 25 to 30 guys. We all sit around a table, and it's just sort of like we read a book every 6 weeks, 2 months, and then everybody goes and you go around the table and you say what you thought and you discuss. But here's the thing. I think men as a gender are not good, compared especially to women, at saying how they feel and talking about the really important things in their life. And there's a whole lot of reasons why men are socialized that way and taught to repress feelings, and why like it's necessary in certain kinds of situations and jobs to suppress your feelings and deal with difficult kind of disastrous situations, for example, right? Like if you're running into a fire, you got to kind of repress how you feel and go into the fire. And there's a way that men are socialized that way. And so I think that like the thing about a book club is it allows men to say, this is like a door that I can walk through, and now it's okay. It's like it is the book, almost like regardless of what the book is even about, it creates this kind of sacred space that you're allowed to talk about anything you want. And it opens that door for men in a way almost nothing else does. Speaking of Hamlet, there was a book club that I'll never forget. It's like, I mean, it chokes me up just thinking about it. But when we read Hamlet in that book club, there was a gentleman in the book club who talked about his own child dying. And he
Mm.
talked about what that was, how he felt ostracized from the community in some ways. Like some people didn't really want to kind of come near him. He felt like people he thought were friends didn't want to be friends with him anymore. He kind of saw who the people really were who were there for them. And it was one of the most difficult chapters of his life. And here he was sort of talking to like, book club guys, but like relative strangers about this. And that is like exactly the kind of thing that book clubs do for men. So it's an amazing environment.
What would you have tips? So if there's a man watching this and they think,
Yeah.
maybe that's something I would like to do, what would your general advice be? I know you didn't start the book club, but having lessons learned along the way, what would you say?
Oh, I mean, lessons learned along the way. I would say like keep it small. I mean, God bless Bill Coley at Wellesley Books. All props to him. But like sometimes it's a little bit big. Like you can only be there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it's like if you have 30 people. I mean, you do the math, right? Not many people can talk. But I mean, I would say if it's possible to keep it to a smaller group of maybe five, 5 to 10, like that's great. So everybody, it's not only that you say like, okay, here's like the top three things I think about this book, but then you get to actually get engaged in a conversation and get down to the second and third level of your thoughts, and actually kind of get to a place that you didn't expect to get to. So the size of it is really important. And then, yeah, I mean, I would just say another thing for guys is like, I'm a big fiction guy. I mean, I think almost all the guys I talk to, especially guys about my age, it's like they're only reading kind of the self-helpy personal transformation books, or they're reading nonfiction, right? It's very few male fiction readers. And why do I love fiction so much? Why do I only want to write fiction and read fiction? I don't know. I just find character and interiority and motivation and psychology absolutely fascinating. And I think that like as a form, literature and especially the novel is like the best equipped to kind of dig down and kind of muck around within human psychology and philosophy and spirituality, more than any other medium and any other kind of book. So I would just say if you're a guy looking for a really productive book club, at least do some fiction. Don't just do like, Teddy Roosevelt's biography and then like sort of the 40 Laws of Power. I mean, like there's nothing to unpack in those books. It's just like, it's like already there, right? But there is something to unpack about kind of morally complex characters and kind of shadowy situations,
Well, that goes back to what you said about how the book club was started and where it comes from, that men are, in your opinion, socialized to maybe repress the big emotions, at least
Yeah.
publicly, and have a different face, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so self-help, or the sort of bro business books, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
crypto and so on, and then nonfiction are great, but they don't scratch the surface of actually your whole point of having a book club is to, dig into emotions that maybe you don't get to do in another, sphere of your life.
That's such a great point. That is like exactly right. Which is just that
Yeah.
like the nonfiction and like the self-help books, kind of personal transformation, it's all just on the surface anyway. It's like that's the world we already live in, where we're talking at that level about those things, right? It's like the ambiguity and subtle and nuance. I mean, this is like what's really interesting about life and about people. I mean, don't you want to like understand people? Like that's what fiction is for, you know?
Yeah, and in fact, I always tell our summer interns to read fiction because it builds your empathy and problem solving and imagination, and to
Yeah.
read nonfiction because that's where the lessons we can learn are,
Right,
and
right,
just
right.
life and how not to do catastrophic things to the world. Like El Boffo in this book is not a good actor. He is. I think we could call him the villain
I
of
think
the
so.
story. I think it's a fair. He's a
He wouldn't call
complicated
himself
character.
that, but
No, he would never, because he's the best, and nobody can touch him. And I love that. I think more people should join book clubs. I really love having a book
yeah.
club. I think that women also don't always make time for themselves and carve out time to do things just for themselves. So I always applaud that as well. But I love the idea of more men reading fiction because I think that's just cool and imaginative. And yeah, like Hamlet is a great book. I have a friend that read it and said that it made them blubber, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just it hit the right chords.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I don't want to
Okay.
take up too much of your time, but I do have some lightning round questions if you are willing to indulge.
I am willing.
Okay, great. Yes. Okay, so as we've talked a little bit at the top of this discussion, Bunyan and Henry is very much rooted in folk tales and Americana, if you will. I'm wondering who, besides Babe the Blue Ox, who is your favorite mythical creature?
Oh, oh, that's good. That's good. I would say I really like the Cyclops in the Odyssey.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. That's just like a good it's just a good battle. It's like that. What I love about the Cyclops in that part of the Odyssey is that like Odysseus is so helpless, but he's got to find he's against this huge physical terrifying creature who's going to eat him, but it ultimately becomes like a battle of wits, and he like tricks him. And I just love physical brawny confrontations that actually are battles of wits. So that's what I love about that. That's what I love about that. Yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty good one. You got me there. I wasn't sure what you were going to say, actually.
Me
So
neither.
I'm glad that you said, said Cyclops. Okay, so if we were to write a folk tale about Mark Cecil, what would you hope that the cornerstone of it would be about?
Oh my God! Like I did write a folktale about Mark Cecil. I mean, this
You
is like
did, yes, but without the overlay of American folk tales.
okay.
Just in
So the question,
your day to
yeah,
day, like everyday Mark
mm,
Cecil, not
every
Mark Cecil
day.
battling El Boffo and
You know,
all
I'm
the
gonna take it in a totally crazy direction right now,
do
and just
it, do it.
tell you something like really personal that I've been going through. So like I just had like it was just sort of like a rough year, like sort of creatively for me. Like I had like a lot of projects, like I had a lot of irons in the fire, and sort of like none of them quite worked out in the way that I wanted. And like a lot of those irons are still in the fire, and it's all good. Like things will work out eventually. But it was just sort of like I was like real close on a few things that like didn't quite go through. And I just was like sort of down about it in the fall, to be honest. And I started like saying this prayer to myself every day, which is like, because like until this point in my career, sort of have felt like, I'm smart enough and I'm industrious enough to get it done. And so I was just like, I always felt like my ideas and my willpower are enough to kind of like get me across the finish line. And this year sort of taught me like that was not really true. And and so I just started. I'm like not like particularly religious person. I love like spiritual texts and I love thinking about religion, but I'm not like I don't go to church regularly or anything. But I just started saying this little prayer to myself. I'd go down in the morning and I would say, God, whatever you put in front of me to write today, I will write that. And
Mm.
it just and that is like what I've been doing for months, and it's like it has really helped me because it's a way of just in my own personal way in my own terms kind of saying like this is not under my control. And whatever is here to pass through me, I will do my part and sit at the desk. And whatever is here to pass through, it will pass through. And if tomorrow I wake up and there's nothing left to pass through and God doesn't put anything before me to write, then that will be it for me. And I would just move on with my life, right? But I just sort of surrendered in that way. So you asked me like, what would I want of my day-to-day life to kind of come through? And I think it would be that. There's just been like, the story of like the last like year for me has just been kind of like a humbling and a kind of surrendering to, you know, the universe, to God, the powers that be, and just saying, I'm here, but I can't do it all. And it's sort of also up to you, you know?
I
That's my
think,
little story.
ooh, that hit me really hard.
Oh,
I I I feel as though that's really important for writers that might be watching this, either
yeah,
now or later, to hear that,
yeah,
because you manifest it, because it's your beautiful destiny, does not always make it so. And I think that's really universal. I've seen that as well. I watch the news, and it kind of consumes you, and then I think you get into this sort of negative spiral because it consumes you, and you think,
yeah,
oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of this? And to be able to center yourself the way you just described, I think is very underrated, and a lot of people simply cannot do it. And
yeah,
I think it's always nice to hear that that's a technique that works. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't believe in that, or it's not going to work for me. And it's the self-fulfilling prophecy, where the more you think negatively, or the more you dwell on something, you get in your own way, if that makes sense.
yeah. And I mean, I would just say, I came to this after a long struggle, and I sort of like, this is just one small thing that I say to myself that helped me. And it's like, can I prove that it is true? Do I want to engage in any kind of like real, like theological debate about it? I don't. It's just how life feels to me. I just feel like I put myself here and things pass through me, and I can only do my part of sitting here. So that's just how I've learned to deal with this struggle.
It's a meditative way of approaching life, whether
Yeah.
it's with religion, without religion, whatever
Yeah.
it may be. It's you found a way to center yourself with it, which I think is really commendable. And I hope a lot of people hear that message. If
Oh.
that's the thing they take away, I hope that's what it is. Okay, I have a couple more silly questions.
Go.
So we want to send you away for a week. Are we sending you to outer space or undersea? And obviously you can breathe under the water.
Definitely outer space. Undersea terrifies me.
Really?
Yes.
Where in outer space, how far would you want to go? As far as you can go?
Not super far. I mean, like
Okay.
just enough.
Like the moon,
Maybe go
maybe?
once around.
Okay, all right. Okay. Okay. Maybe Orbital. That's the book that we
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. That was a great
Yeah,
book.
it was a great book. That's another book about, centering yourself in isolation and
Yeah.
loneliness. And then my last question is, what is your favorite snack while you write?
Ooh, so many.
Or
Um,
snacks.
dude, you know
I,
what's a good one? Is like I get a coffee and then I like make my own gorp, like trail mix. I just get like some chocolate chips and like some like roasted cashews and I sort of pour them together and then just like that's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Okay. I might have to try that.
Yeah.
I've
About
never
three
thought to
o'clock
make my
every
own.
day. Yeah.
Okay. So the 3 o'clock Cecil snack is cashew
Yeah. It's
and
like
chocolate.
instead of just like falling asleep, you
Yeah.
hit that snack and you get maybe like 2 hours more,
I
but
love it.
then you
I love
collapse.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. This is so fun. Mark, thank you for joining me.
Of
I really
course.
always appreciate your time and your candor, and it's always fun to talk to you about books and the world, and how to center ourselves in this mayhem, I guess is the word that's coming to mind these days.
Totally. Can I just ask you one last question? I know it's
Of
your
course.
show. I
No,
mean,
it's
I'm
not
just
the
like, you
show.
have
It's
this,
fun chatting.
I've been like sort of following you since you started following me, and I've like seen how you've kind of like grown, like, you're kind of growing into like a book influencer, and now you're doing things like this, and you've got your book club. I mean, your profile is rising. And I'm just curious, like, what motivates you? Like, why do you want to be this person who kind of serves the literary community, is somebody who's influential and helping people find the books that they ought to be reading? Like, what do you get out of that?
Wow, that's a great question. I love books on a level that is probably a little bit bananas,
Yeah,
and I'm not embarrassed to say that because I think stories are such a gateway to every human emotion, and I think it's just the safest space for people to process things that are going on in the world in
yeah,
books.
yeah,
But I have to be candid. I think my book, quote unquote, influencer journey really began in 2020 when I saw all of the unrest around George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of these things, the pandemic as well. And I thought, how can I use my voice to reach people through books that can
yeah.
also change their mind about the world? And how can I encourage people to think differently and think outside of their comfort zones? And it really started with, okay, first you have to read diversely. You can't, I, Shachi, cannot read only books that look like me and sound like me. I really
Yeah.
need to absorb everybody else. And it's really grown since then to just be, how many stories can I collect in my brain that are different from my own? Because then
Yeah.
I can tap into them later. And I just want to share that feeling with everybody. And so, whether that comes through, hopefully it comes through in my posts and, these chats and other places. But really at my core, I want people to connect and build community. And I think books are kind of the way to do it.
I totally agree. And as I said, I mean, I kind of see now where you were going with that question about the book club. I mean, I think a book club allows men, certainly, and I think also all kinds of people, but my direct experience being men, it allows them to connect in a way that they wouldn't otherwise and make friendships on a level. It's sort of like you can kind of skip past 3 years of talking about the Red Sox and go right to, I'm going to tell you about the time my child died,
Yeah.
when he was a teenager. And it's like, oh my God, there's probably people who have known that guy his whole life who have never heard him talk that way. And why did it happen? Because books open the door to that kind of, I think, deeper experience of human life. We are all here trying to get the most out of life, trying to live richly, trying to live, a life that you feel like, wow, when you get to the end, you think, man, I really lived. I really felt what there was to feel and thought what there was to think. And I think books are the way to just kind of enrich yourself into a fuller life.
Yeah. And I think books also directly solve the loneliness crisis that so
Mm,
many countries in the world are facing. And, to know that there is a community of people that have experienced the same book as that you feel a little less alone. And
yeah,
I also want to bring that to people. So,
it's
those are
amazing.
those are my goals. And but I also love books and I love stories and I love Bunyan and Henry.
Well, I'm so grateful. I mean, not just for loving Bunyan and Henry, but I'm grateful for all you do. I love it that you're out there doing it. It's like the literature community needs people like you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell us last thing before we sign off? Are you working on any new stories that you would like to share with us, or maybe who's coming up on your podcast?
Well, who's coming up with a podcast is a guy named Chris Castellani. He's a great Boston writer. He wrote a great book called Leading Men, and he's got a new book that's coming out in a couple weeks. So it's Chris Castellani. That'll be on like February 17th. I am working on a couple new projects. And yes, and I will only say this because I don't want to like jinx anything, but
No.
the new one is totally different than Bunyan and Henry. It is like a kind of contemporary, sort of Black Mirror like dystopian kind of tech thriller. But it's got a lot of heart. It's about a relationship between a father and a son. But I'm just so excited to get this book out there. It's almost done, and yeah. So who knows? We're trying this, and I sort of get bored doing the same thing twice. So
Well, on behalf of everybody at either in my book club or in the universe, I'm wishing you all the good things. And I can't wait to read it and celebrate it and have you back on this podcast or this Instagram live, and we can chat all about it then.
I can't wait. I just book me now. I will come on this show anytime.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here. He's booked. All right.
um,
Thanks, everybody, for joining. And thank you so much, Mark, for chatting
of
with me. This
course,
has been a blast.
always. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.